Executive producer, right? Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRICnow.com, our Facebook page and our YouTube page. If you've not tuned into the show before, we just talk a little ball, kind of recap this past weekend, talk about what's coming up this upcoming weekend, and kind of give you a recap of everything happening in the world of Central Virginia. And there's no better way to start this week than talking the AFC and NFC championship games that took place this past Sunday. I know it had just basically the entire country's attention. Both games turned out to be pretty good for the most part, not so much for the Commanders. But to talk about the Commanders and the AFC Championship game, we're bringing executive producer here at WRIC at 8 News, and that is Conner Nuckols. Conner, thank you so much for stopping by today to talk a little conference championship weekend.
No
I think
problem.
Before we hop into these games, we kind of just give your background a little bit. You started here a couple of months after I did.
Yeah.
Where are you originally from, and who are your favorite teams?
Yes, I came out here from Idaho Falls, but I'd been around. I worked in Alaska and I worked in Minnesota prior to. You could see the trend there. But I'm from Washington State, so I root for the Seattle teams mostly, except for basketball. I kind of float around there with the Sonics gone, rip. but yeah, so football, definitely a Seahawks guy. But I kind of like the song in baseball. I root for the home team, so I was really pulling for those Commanders.
Of course.
Weekend,
down south now here in Richmond, Virginia, Alaska and Minnesota. But yeah, so we'll kind of pick up with the NFC Championship game. Obviously, from the start, it looked like it could be a good game. The Eagles end up winning it 55-23, led by Jalen Hurts, who finally had his big day that I think a lot of Eagles fans were expecting. He finishes 20 for 28 for 246 yards and a score. Jaden Daniels finished with 255. Had a pick late. That was in garbage time, though. But, in this game, the Commanders kind of just got outplayed. I think coming into the game, a lot of people thought that the Eagles had a better roster top to bottom other than quarterback. And I think a lot of the, expectations and the hope for Commanders fans was that, hey, we have Jaden Daniels, everything's going to be okay. But that didn't end up being the case, did it?
Yeah, I mean, it really was the Eagles' game to lose, and the Commanders, they really were playing on house money for the most part. As much as I love them, they had such a fantastic run. One of my buddies, I remember he was even saying at the beginning of the season, a lot of fans, their expectations were not very high. So to go to the NFC Conference Championship, and even though it kind of turned into a little bit of a blowout, but to do that with a rookie quarterback, that's almost unheard of. So a lot to hang. They don't really have to hang their hands at that. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you. Expectations coming into the season were just to improve. I don't even think a playoff berth was in the cards for most Commander fans when coming into the season. Dan Quinn, I think everyone was kind of disappointed with that hire. I think everyone wanted to see a bigger name. They bring in the guy that infamously loses 31-3 in the Super Bowl, and there were no hype, no expectations for this team. And Jaden Daniels just kind of blew everyone out of the water. By far, was the best rookie quarterback. Easily, I think, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL if you go back and rank them after the season's end. And I think at the end of the day, when you go back and look at this game, not to get too full circle just yet, is their lack of a run game, I think, really hurt them. And it did the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I kept bringing it up on this show that they had to figure out a way to be able to run the ball better. But I think 6 of the last 7 weeks, Jaden Daniels was their leading rusher. Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler just couldn't do anything. Eckler finished 8 carries for 15 yards. Robinson, 11 carries for 36 yards. I mean, they had no run game. They struggled to move the ball. And obviously the fumbles, I think, played the biggest
Turnovers
part
were big,
in that game.
No, turnovers were big for sure. But and to your point, yeah, I think we've learned a lot from Saquon and even with the Ravens, even though they didn't make the Super Bowl with Derrick Henry, you still have to be able to run the football in this league. And to kind of compare Jaden Daniels, there was one season by the Seahawks where Russell Wilson was their leading rusher.
Yep.
And I can't remember if they made the playoffs. It was the one season he was there when they missed it. But they didn't go far, is the point I'm making. So, yeah, whenever your quarterback is your leading rusher, not the best sign. Got to be able to pound that football down the middle.
Yeah, especially when it's cold in Philly on the road. I mean, it would have against Detroit. I thought that the Commanders had a pretty good shot at a back and forth, high scoring affair type game. Because their defense has been so bad this season. I kind of liked those odds, but when you're playing a Philadelphia team that not only can that has receivers like Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, who both were kind of quiet leading up into Sunday's game. Because they had Saquon Barkley, they were going to have to answer with a strong run game, I think, as well. And I think that proved to be their biggest, weakness in this matchup, other than the fact that, of course, their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. I mean, it was pathetic what Washington put out there on defense. Bobby Wagner, that first play of the game, Bobby Wagner tripped over 3 defenders trying to get to Saquon Barkley on that opening run. And, I mean, it kind of puts it in perspective, I think, a little bit that Washington was ahead of schedule. But at the same time, it's not easy to get to that game. And so when you get to those games, you got to capitalize, and they just didn't.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I think that is kind of the reason Washington brought in Dan Quinn, because one thing, I know he gets overlooked a little bit because of the Super Bowl loss, but he did help put together the Legion of Boom in Seattle, so he does have a good defensive mind.
That's a good point. That's a nice tie-in.
Yeah, it's sure. I see why you brought me on now. Yeah, but no, I think Dan Quinn is a solid coach. Yeah, I do think he gets remembered for that Super Bowl, and I think again, this is his first season with him. I think we're going to continue to see that defense improve over time. But yeah, it wasn't there, and the Eagles are a team with that electric offense. And if you're going in there with a subpar defense, they're going to make you pay, and they showed that.
Yeah, I think the lone bright spot of the day was probably the fourth down punt throw by Tress Way. I mean, that was at that point it was 14-3, and Dan Quinn kind of, I think previously they went for it on fourth down on their opening drive twice. Only got 3 points out of that one. Next time they get the ball, they're down 14-3. I guess it was 2 times later. They get the ball, and Tress Way delivered that dime up the middle of the field.
Beautiful.
And at that moment, it's like, all right, well, the Commanders, I feel like I've already hit the lottery ball twice now. It's going to be tough to continue. And sure enough, they quickly learned that they do not have quite the roster that Philadelphia had this season.
Yeah, and they're close. Like I said, they have some pieces that they got to make. They're going to in the offseason. Yeah, they're probably going to shed some weight. I'd be surprised if Bobby Wagner comes back, but they're going to find some young talent, and I think they're just a few pieces away to being a true contender in the NFC.
It was a few years ago, where we had the Los Angeles Bengals Super Bowl, and after that game, Joe Burrow has that famous quote where he says, "If I'm here, the window's always open." It kind of feels that way with Jane Daniels, but on the flip side of that coin, the Bengals didn't even make the playoffs this season. So it's like, to get to this game is not easy. I mean, there's 32 teams trying to do it. Only 31 teams finish the season unhappy. There's only one team that finishes the year happy. And so I think it's easy to smell the roses that this was a great season, look big picture for the Commanders, but at the same time, it's not easy to get to this point at all. I mean, the Bengals haven't been back. They're considered to have one of the better quarterbacks in the league. The Rams, they won theirs. They haven't been back. And so, but at the same time, here are the Eagles, back, I think, is it 3 times in 8 years or something?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And we got a rematch on our hands. The Eagles I want to focus a little bit on the Eagles before we switch to the AFC Championship game. I mean, from top to bottom, their roster is so impressive. I mean, their receivers, their offensive line. I can't speak as much on their defense. I don't know that much. But Jalen Hurts kind of had the game that I think everyone was kind of waiting for him to have. I think that was their one setback going into this game, that, yes, Washington's quarterback's better. And Jalen Hurts kind of, I think he proved a lot of doubters wrong in this matchup. I mean, towards the end of the game, it was almost boring. I mean, Philly beat them every inch of the way. I mean, it was incredible. Saquon Barkley, I mean, it's hard not to just keep giving them praises because they've looked so good this playoff run.
Well, and I think you said it best there. They're just such a well-rounded team. They have all kinds of weapons. They got 2 receivers that can beat anybody. They got Saquon who can run over everybody. And they got a solid quarterback with Jalen Hurts. And solid's an understatement right there. I apologize, Jalen Hurts. You're a great quarterback.
I think he proved that. I think the guy's been to the Super Bowl twice now. It's about time that he gets some credit.
And I also think, just going to your point on how hard it is to get the Super Bowl, I think that just speaks waves to the talent in the NFL, because even the Chiefs, when you look at them, like, their identity has changed over the years too. They're not the same Chiefs that won their first Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that just shows that there's different approaches you can get to the Super Bowl. There's not really a right or wrong answer in how you get there. You just have to make sure you're assembling the right pieces for your team to make that happen.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about Philadelphia as well. You think back to mid-season, they had that early loss, and people are ready to fire Nick Sirianni. He's taken the Eagles to the Super Bowl twice now, and they were ready to get rid of him. I think that says a lot about Eagles fans. That's why it was never going to be easy for Washington, to even succeed on the road in Philadelphia. And I want to share this clip that went around social media this week. Of Commanders fans were so excited they were going to go on the road. And now, granted, I was pulling for Washington. I hope this Commanders fan's not from the Richmond area.
Oh, no.
But this clip went viral online. I wanted to share it with you. Press play here. So he goes on to give this big speech about, we took over Philadelphia, and then unfortunately he went viral again after the game. Somehow, of course, the Eagles faithful were able to find him, and this is him leaving the stadium.
Phillies fans
on Sunday.
Cold-blooded. Oh, no, they're going to haze him, aren't
they? They found him in the stands. I just hate it for him. I hate it for him. I'm sure he's a great guy. Was able to rally those fans at the Hard Rock Cafe, but unfortunately, when you go into Philadelphia, it's a place I never want to go to watch a game.
Like Philly, and I think a Boston Red Sox game. Like, no, I don't want anything to do with those fans. No,
I'm fine with putting on
don't
the other.
Poke the bear.
The other stadium stuff. All right, well, let's turn our attention a little bit and talk Bills and Chiefs, because it's another matchup that it brings us the greatest game of the year every single year, and then every year it seems to be the same result. Josh Allen does everything he can just for his team to get heartbroken. He finishes 22 for 34, threw for 237, 2 scores. Mahomes throws for 245 and a touchdown. And it happened again. There's been a lot of discourse online about the refs in this game, as well as the Texans game. And I don't subscribe so much to NFL rigged or anything along those lines. I think even if they give Buffalo that first down that I think most people are upset about, I think the Chiefs still win the game regardless, because that's just kind of how it is. But at this point, it's got to be so disheartening, not just for Josh Allen and the staff, but Buffalo fans in general.
And his face said it all, honestly, last night. He looked or on Sunday night, excuse me, like he looked broken, and I don't blame him. I don't know what I would do if I lost to the same guy over and over. But similar to the Commanders, the Bills really don't have to hang their heads. They had a great season. That was one heck of a game that they played, and the fact that he got that pass off at the end there, right when they were trying to make that comeback, that was just incredible.
Yeah, it was a great blitz too. It was a good play call.
Oh, great! Yeah, no, fantastic. And one thing to go to your point about the whole rigged thing, I think Nick Nurse said it best. Just like, if that is your take, you don't care enough about the game, in my opinion, because there's 32 teams in the league. You think they're all like all going to be like, yeah, let's let Kansas City win again. Yeah, let's let Philly win. No, they want to win.
That's my top argument. It's like, what does the NFL have to gain from Kansas City, Missouri having the best team? Wouldn't it be much more beneficial for it to be Los Angeles or New York?
Yeah, like a big market team, like where everyone's going to be tuning in. But yeah, but I mean, I'm always shocked at how big that stadium is in Kansas City, though. Like how many people are packed into that? It's insane.
Yeah, it brought us, maybe the game of the year. I hate it for Buffalo. They obviously beat them earlier this season. It kind of seemed like this was going to be Josh Allen was going to be able to do it. He needed to play a perfect game, and I think he played pretty well. I mean, I don't know how much better he could have played. Honestly, I think this game comes down to
who gets the ball last.
Who got the ball last? The early decision from Sean McDermott to go for 2 and then to go for 2 again. I think that kind of screwed things up for Buffalo in the long run. And I think that Andy Reid outcoached Sean McDermott in this matchup, and I think it led to another Kansas City-Philadelphia Super Bowl coming up.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely two schools of thought there. I mean, you can say that the Chiefs outplayed the Bills or they outcoached the Bills. But I think at the end of the day, what we're looking at is it was just those tiny things that we're kind of mentioning. I think a lot of people downplay that extra point or take, instead of going for it on 4th and 5, you kick the field goal. Those points do add up, and I think a lot of teams have kind of realized it. And I get, like, with the statistics, sometimes it makes sense just to go for 2. But at the end of the day, like, when you're in a tight game like that and you're thinking, crap, those 2 extra points I got right there, maybe that's the result of a tie ball game or winning the game in some cases.
I think, let's give – I was pretty hard on Sean McDermott. When he decided to go for 2 in the moment, I was like, yep, definitely you got to go for 2 here, and obviously it didn't work out for them. One thing we didn't talk about that I think is worthy of bringing up is the tush push.
Yeah.
Obviously, Philadelphia converted, I think, 5 for 5 in their game, and the Bills, I think, went 0 for 5 on their version of it. I don't want to get too brash in our opinions here, but what do you think of the play? Should it be allowed? I think it's interesting that no other team can seem to do it successfully other than Philadelphia. Does that warrant that it should be banned, or does that warrant that it should stay? Is this a waste of a conversation? But it's hard to ignore that when it's anything in 1 yard to go, it's a free first down, seemingly just for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's worth a conversation. I mean, I don't think we were even talking about it when Tom did it, when the Patriots would do that.
Yeah, he was notoriously a great quarterback sneak.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with the tush push because, I mean, yeah, some people could say, but if you get on the 1 yard line, then it's a guaranteed score. Well, you got to get on the 1 yard line to do it.
That's true.
So
I'll be curious to see if they, go I don't know if the college still has this rule, but the old college rule is that the running back could not push the quarterback. I'm curious if maybe they go, that's how you change it. But I think Jalen Hurts, the guy squats like 400 pounds, he would still be able to successfully get that 1 yard with the offensive line. But I won't be surprised if that's the case, especially if it plays a role in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. And let's talk a little Super Bowl. Obviously, we got 13 days to it, but it's a rematch from 2 years ago. Kansas City, Philadelphia. I'm so tired of watching Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I can't stand it. But what's your early take on it?
Oh man, yeah, no, it brings me back to when I was in Minnesota. That's when they last played each other, and that I'm looking forward to it. I'm a football fan first and foremost, even before my Seahawks. Like, I just want to watch a good football game. Like, at the end of the day, so I don't care if my team makes the playoffs or not. If they were playing great football throughout the year, I love it. So that's what I want to see in a Super Bowl. I want to see this. They were the game that went to overtime. Was it the Eagles and the Chiefs that went to overtime?
My best memory is that it was Turfgate.
It was Turfgate.
I do not remember.
But regardless, whichever one of their games went, one of the Super Bowls recently went to overtime. That's what I want to see because that's good television. That just gets me excited and just gets my love for the game skyrocketing. So I just want a good game out of it at the end of the day. If the Chiefs win, that's cool. It's a historic moment.
Yep.
Cool. Let's give them some love. But I do understand it can get frustrating. Watch the same team win over and over.
I think it says a lot about Patrick Mahomes and how good he has been. But looking forward to it. We got quite the countdown. Mekhi Becton, he's our local tie to it. Highland Springs High School, went to Louisville, and has been a great tackle since he's joined the league. Was drafted by the Jets, played there for a few years, and now he's in Philadelphia looking to win himself a ring. So big luck to the Bectons and Mr. Conner Nuckols. Thanks so much for stopping by. We're going to talk a little VCU basketball, and Virginia Tech's got themselves a new defensive coordinator. But just wanted to thank Conner for stopping by.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And helping me out with some conference championship talk. Thanks so much, Conner. All right, well, let's turn our attention now to some VCU basketball real quick. They're taking on St. Bonaventure. They just took on St. Bonaventure, got a big win. Tonight, they'll take on St. Louis, a team that they've already beaten this year, 78-62. That was a few weeks back following that game against Fordham where there was no one in the stands. They followed that up with a big win. And when they beat St. Bonaventure last week on Friday night, they led by Joe Bamlinson with 18 points. Philip Russell added 16 in this matchup. They forced 16 turnovers, and I got some footage from their matchup at home against what was supposed to be a really good St. Bonaventure team. It was the only team that VCU had lost to coming into the game in conference play. And so coming into the matchup, we talked to Coach Odom a lot about, is this a revenge game? And he didn't really subscribe to, that thought. He said that this is just another game. I'm not buying that. I think VCU went into this game. They wanted to play their brand of basketball, which is proving to be one of the best defenses in the country. And half-court defense, they're second best in the country at half-court defense. 2 games ago, they forced 27 turnovers. Against St. Bonaventure, they forced 17 turnovers. I mean, they've been incredible. Phil Russell had 16 points in that first half. He'd finished with 16 for the game. And it kind of gave you an idea of just where this offense comes each night for VCU. It's everybody. It's Max Shulga. It's Philip Russell. It's Joe Bamasil. Everyone on this roster contributes at such a high level. And the freshmen are playing well. Brandon Jennings of St. Christopher's has been awesome this season. I mean, there are 10 guys that are playing a huge role for VCU this season, and they're in action tonight at 8 o'clock if you want to watch it. That's on the CBS Sports Network. They're looking for their 7th straight A-10 win. I think tonight on air I might have said 6th. They're looking for their 7th straight A-10 matchup. All right, let's turn our attention now to a little Virginia Tech news. They got a new defense coordinator. They announced him late last night after, I think, 8 weeks of searching since they had fired Chris Marv. Might have been 7 weeks of searching for a new defensive coordinator. And they ended up going with Sam, I want to say his name right, Seifkis. Sam Seifkis, that's what it is. He was the linebackers coach for the Arizona Cardinals, spent 2 seasons with Arizona. Then he spent, before that, he had a couple of personnel jobs with the Minnesota Vikings. He does have some college defensive coordinator ties to him, at least. He was defensive coordinator at UW-Platteville, which is one of the better schools in the UW Division III schools. You might have heard of UW-Whitewater. They play in the same conference as them. They're a D3 power. And then he was defense coordinator at Wofford for a couple of seasons as well. So he has called a defense. He has been a defense coordinator. And he replaces, of course, Chris Marv, who Brent Pry brought in from Penn State to be his defense coordinator. He fired him this past season before Virginia Tech's bowl game. And now it brings in this, new blood for Virginia Tech. And this is what head coach Brent Pry had to say following the hiring and today during his press conference.
2 NFL head coaches reach out and that he'll lead our defensive coaches, our defensive players, and that we will improve defensively. In the end, that made the decision for me.
Yeah, so they hear from the horse's mouth. Seems excited about the hire. One of the things that he did mention during this press conference, that one of the reasons that Virginia Tech was so late to hiring a defensive coordinator, I mean, we're talking 7 weeks went by before they announced this new D coordinator, was because they had a candidate that was in the championship game. Didn't say who that was, so either someone on Ohio State staff or someone on Notre Dame staff was kind of in the running for this, and he decided to, or was forced to decide, to go with Sam Seifkis. Tough name to say. It's got an F in there. It's a confusing name, to say the least. But we'll see what he does in Blacksburg. I think Brent Pry's in a tough spot. On3.com released coaches on a hot seat list today. Brent Pry's name was number 1. I don't think that's a ridiculous take either. Was not surprised that he decided to make a move at offensive or defensive coordinator. He decides to bring in a defensive guy from the NFL. Of course, his offensive coordinator was the tight ends coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So now he's got 2 guys that have NFL ties that he's decided to bring in instead of going to the college route. And we'll see what that does for him. Another thing he mentioned is that Sam's going to have a big impact on the coaches that either stay or that he hires on his defensive staff, whether that's bringing in somebody new or changing a defensive coach position. So we could see a lot of movement on this Virginia Tech staff coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But that's going to wrap up another edition of 8 Sports Nightcap. Thanks so much to Conner for stopping by, talking some NFC and AFC championship games. Next week, we'll be back to preview the Super Bowl, and then we got Super Bowl Sunday. Unfortunately, the Washington Commanders are not in it. That would have been a lot of fun to chat some Commanders in the Super Bowl talk. But until then, tonight, VCU takes on St. Louis. We'll have the highlights from their matchup at 8 o'clock. Again, that's nationally televised on the CBS Sports Network. We'll see you guys next Tuesday at 6:45. Good night, everybody. See you next time.